r/AskReddit posted by user /sleepy and disturbed. Serious, what is the creepiest confession / most disturbing that you have heard from an otherwise normal person? Most disturbing was when a friend confided in me that she had been sexually assaulted. It was quite disturbing because I used to think of sexual violence as an abstract concept that wasn't pervasive enough to affect my world. But it is. Disabused me of many inaccurate notions. I used to think that way too. How wrong was I? Hope your friend is doing better though. She's way too tough to let anything take her down. That's good to know. I gave 4 virgins chlamydia. Instantly thought less of this person. Edit. I really hope said person doesn't read Reddit. As a brag, it was during a game of Never Have I Ever. One of his friends said never have I ever given 4 virgins chlamydia, and he had to drink. Unfortunately this is about me. I told a friend and they were pretty creeped out about it, and I'm quite embarrassed of it really. I've never done it again, and it's really changed the way I talk to people online. My Reddit account has some very easy to follow steps to find out who I am, so I only post positive things, very tame critiques, and that's about it. My account has my name that I share with a lot of other things, previous online accounts, etc. But my story is about how I cyberstalked a BF3 hacker just because he was being annoying. When BF3 became free to play, I joined the TDM server. I have quite a few hours on BF3, 300 plus, and I really enjoyed it. To see a full server again was quite fun, and I was kicking butt. Then this guy joins. This guy starts kicking butt, heading shooting me from across the map. I don't think too much of it, but I ask, hey man, is that all skill? He responds it is, and he's streaming. BF3 isn't a very popular game, so it took less than a minute to find his Twitch stream. Just look for a picture of the same map being played and his was the first. Clearly hacking. Boxes on screen. Snapping headshots. The whole 9 yards. So now I had his stream. I called it out in game, linked the stream, and he left / was booted a minute later. In that minute he was joking about how, as the game was free, he could just get another account and keep going. On his stream he wasn't talking, but he was typing. He was typing to another streamer. Now his stream just had me as a viewer. I was pretty bored, and he had my attention. He hadn't really ruined my gaming experience, it was just, who is this douche? His Twitch name matched his Twitter name, which he used to promote his stream. His Twitter was filled with bully / trolling posts at people, and he was just a smarmy douchebag. No photos though. His name was included, but it wasn't a very unique name. Now I have a Twitter account and a name. This is where it gets even worse. I start to troll his posts. Going back months, I find a post that links him to a town. I Google search the town and his name. Bingo. A post about Australia Day and how he thought this town had put on a really bad show. Just saying how bad it was etc, and trolling people in the comments. It was a small town and people were biting. You should organize it. If you think you're so great etc, he was eating it up. But I had his Facebook. Start looking into his profile. Posts were private, but the Facebook URL closely matched the Twitter, so I knew it was him. The profile pics were nondescript, banned pages, random shit like that. But this guy had a girlfriend. Her profile was public, and she kept tagging him in posts. It was so cringy. I love you boo. You are my world. The most beautiful girl I know. etc etc. The guy and his girlfriend were 2 ham planets. He was the epitome of keyboard warrior. He had a fedora wearing lens flare edited profile picture. It was actually just perfect. It was just so satisfying that this guy was the stereotype personified. I cold left it there, but I had to go a step further. I created another Twitch account just to let the guy know I found him. I posted his Facebook details in the chat of Twitch. There was like maximum 4 people watching him stream, but you could see it pop up on his stream chat, him pause mid game and just not do anything for like 5 seconds. He closed the stream. I had a friend confess that every time he stayed at my apartment, which was frequently because we lived in different countries, sometimes he would stay for a month plus at a time, he watched me sleep. I woke with him staring at me. He was literally inches away from my face just staring, and I freaked out. He broke down and confessed. My husband was asleep next to me. That was the most creepy for sure. It also ended our friendship. A colleague confessed that she had sex with her brother throughout her childhood and early adolescence. She also told me she despises her brother's wife because she is in love with her brother and is insanely jealous of his life and kids. She has never had a relationship and fears she will never be married or have kids of her own. She doesn't sound very normal. Not at all. She's nuts and also highly manipulative. I'm a little afraid of her. Yikes. Best friend told me he had been molested as a child. Apparently I'm the only one of his friends he has told. I can see why it would be harder for a guy to confess. A friend had told me for years about the dark secret in his past that he can't tell anybody. Eventually he felt comfortable enough to confess, and he really was not exaggerating. When he was young he aped his younger sister. The family knew about it, and they all got counseling and stuff at the time. He and his sister are friends now. But duck. That made my jaw drop. What the actual duck? That my great uncle likes kids. It suddenly made a whole lot more sense that none of his adult daughters were ever married / had a serious LTR and are overweight with self-esteem issues. Every other aspect of his life is perfectly normal, and I would have never expected that from him. There was a court case before I was born that was dismissed. My mother never even let me meet him until early this year because she didn't want to take the chance that he might act indecently towards me. I have a couple posts. One friend stabbed someone and the person did not survive. He wasn't charged because he claimed self-defense, but he's all ducked up about it because he thought the person was armed and they weren't. When I was 13 my 16-year-old friend told me she used to shit herself until she was 13 in an effort to keep her dad from molesting her. She threatened to call the cops and her dad committed suicide with a shotgun in their living room. My ex told me that he fantasized about his 7-year-old neighbor. That was 10 years ago. He's ducked up, and I know it. This same ex told me his uncle used to fall asleep with his genitals in his mouth when he was a kid. I've had a pretty colorful life, but I don't want to air my personal dirty laundry. I'll update if I think of anything else. Edit. I got one more for ya. My friend has long dreads and had a pretty bad case of lice. When he came back from traveling his roommates wouldn't let him in the house until he was lice free. Being poor he couldn't afford treatment, so he dunked his head in some sort of gasoline. Then he lit a cigarette. He has no nipples. Most of his body is skin grafted. He still has dreads. He is lice free. Oh what the heck. I'll keep going. My friend passed away a year ago. His duck buddy at the time wanted to inject heroin into his veins for him. She overshot it. I honestly thought he was clean, so I was a bit surprised. I was at a friend's farmhouse and watched them stomp a baby opossum to death. I was told they also hacked a raccoon with a machete. This is the same person that was excited about their new taser and keep looking for small critters, mostly toads, to taste. He would then throw their paralyzed bodies in the fish pond to drown. Edit. More. A friend of mine is a production of ape. He has serious identity issues as his mother is Native American and his father is white. He absolutely despises white people. My best friend that passed away confided in me that his girlfriend from back in his home state, we meet in college, was pregnant and giving the baby up for adoption. She also had leukemia, but beat it. I know during the pregnancy she needed a blood transfusion. He told me he didn't really care about her anymore. He was struck by a car and she had just given their baby up for adoption. They started a lengthy court battle to get back custody and I never kept in touch with her enough to find out the outcome. Another good friend confided in me that his girlfriend was repeatedly sexually abused by her brother. She could always get uncomfortably perverted in public, so I was really surprised to hear that. Oh. And a friend of mine told me her parents wiped her ass for her until she was 12 and they melted her ice cream before she could eat it because they were afraid it was too cold. She also told them that her car broke down RV she needed 10k to buy another. It was fine. She lied and used the 10k to pay for her girlfriend at the time's exchange operation in Thailand. I need a throwaway for this because it's really stupid. Before reading, realize I was a stupid teen. In 2009 one of my closest friends made a confession I found disturbing back then. He told me that he was gay and my reaction was completely wrong. What I did was kicking him in the face and telling him he should cure from his disease or I would never want to see you again. And I never did. Sadly, 2 months after this happened he committed suicide. I'm not even 100% sure this was because of me, but no one else knew that he was gay or fake. I didn't even attend his funeral because then I had no idea it could be because of me. I realized that later and I still mourn him. I'm so sorry for this, but I never told this to one of his friends or family. I'm donating the Human Rights Campaign and Suicide Prevention Foundations today, and I think this is the best I can do. Something like this is something I wish never happens again. I had an art teacher in about 3rd grade who was really cool, or at least I thought so. At some point, she came up to me and said, "I love your red hair. I just want to chop it all off when you're asleep and glue it to my head." It's one of my sharpest childhood memories because I remember going afterward, "Oh, thanks," and laughing really nervously. On my way home from counseling, an elderly lady talked to me about her experience as a nurse in a mental institution. Some of the things she said were horrifying and sad. I think she was glad to get it off her chest. This included patients with schizophrenia who were abandoned by families, people admitted into the wards because of their homosexuality with some very upsetting consequences, and more. Most involved patients taking their own lives. I sat there and listened, though I'm not sure how much of it actually sunk in until I got home. There was this chef I worked with who seemed like a pretty normal dude. He was an immigrant from Haiti. One day he brings up that he had to put his sick dog down when he was a kid. He said he did it himself, since Haitians didn't have extensive access to medical care for people, much less animals. He said he tied a rock to its neck and dropped it in the ocean. That made it really hard to talk to him. A friend of mine confessed that he was molested as a child. His parents are part of this cult that believes their leader can talk to God. The cult is decent sized. There are about a few hundred members. When I researched it, my friend said that there was a man from the church who would offer to babysit him and his little brother. The babysitter would offer them money to take off their clothes, get their pictures taken, and do XL favors. The church gathers a block from my house. I thought this building was a temple or a mosque, but in reality it's some sort of cult compound. Some of the members are actually part of the local police too. If I wasn't always drunk I would probably be scared. Took a humanities course where the teacher had put a big emphasis on using it as a therapy session. People would share stories about a relative getting cancer or the death of somebody, etc. I was talking with a female friend / acquaintance, whom I knew from that class, and the subject turned to a meeting a few days prior where a few stories about rape and molestation were shared. She told me that she considered reporting her father for molestation when she was a teen and her parents were going through a divorce. I confided that her father never actually laid a finger on her, and A's mother was already riding roughshod over him because the family business was registered in her name for tax reasons, but the divorce was dragging on. I was firmly on her mother's side and thought that reporting him would put a quick end to the proceedings. As a male, that terrified me, and in the context of the legitimate victims that shared their stories a few days prior, disgusted me. I stopped meeting her outside of that specific class. Me and 2 friends, S and O, went on a school trip a while back that lasted like a week, so we had a room together. Anyway, we were all sitting next to each other, telling jokes to each other and stuff, when suddenly O straight up punches S in the face for seemingly no reason. O storms back to the room, while S is lying on the floor, stunned. Tensions had been rising for a while now, cause when you spend too much time with your friends you start to hate them. Anyway, I go back to our room, where I find O lying on his bed, crying. O was one of the toughest guys I knew, and I'd never seen him cry before. I ask him what's wrong, and he tells me that S said something about his sister, around 6 years old. Then he tells me he had a nightmare about her a while back, but it was too real to be a dream. After inquiring about it more, all I got from him on the subject was it destroyed me. Seriously, that sent chills down my spine, but he never really mentioned it again. Editor had a dream a while ago, and he'd all but forgotten about it. When S and O were arguing, Her name was mentioned, and O just snapped. Nothing physically happened to O's sister, it was only a nightmare. Had an absolutely charming, incredibly smart looking close friend for a few years. It took me about 1,5-2 years to find out everything about her life was a lie. Even the smarts. She'd read some detailed article on a subject and present ideas, as if they were her own, but never knew anything deeper. Pretended to speak many languages by secretly watching a foreign movie with subs on, then translating some cool scenes to us. She made up a story about her father abusing her mom, to make excuses for failing her uni exams, lied to people about being a medical student to look smart, and would give them very dangerous advice, lied to her family about being a brilliant medical student, don't know if they believed her, and about many other things. She was an incredibly fun person, but an awful toxic friend. Still, I was afraid she'd lose her mind completely if I revealed her secrets to everyone. So I only quietly told the people she was abusing, or potentially putting in danger, so she couldn't do any damage anymore. Several times I tried to talk her into going into therapy, but I stopped. She was in complete denial about me knowing everything. I was so afraid she'd kill herself if she found out what everyone thought of her. One day she just packed her things, said goodbye with a hug and a huge smile on her face, and left for another country to pursue her medical studies. I've kept evidence of all the craziness in case it comes back someday. I'd say that if you genuinely pay attention to people around you, you'll find out many creepy stories like this. Some people see friends come and go and actually never have any idea of what's going on in their lives. I work with a Polish dude who barely speaks English. He's a lovable 40-something dude who just drinks vodka and laughs infectiously all day long. A textbook carefree scamp. Every couple of months everyone from work heads to a bar that hook us up with half-price drinks for that particular night. It's pretty sweet. So anyway, this Polish dude and I were at the end of a long 10-person bench laughing about nothing and drinking ice-cold cruiser after ice-cold cruiser. It was great. Eventually we, somehow, got onto the topic of what he did before he came to England. After a few brews his English became even more scattered, but he did try, bless him. So he says he was in the army, and so on and so forth. After which he said I shoot 7 men dead. Now that might not seem too heavy for you, but it blew me away. He was on the front lines during the Kosovan War, from what I could gather. I couldn't, and didn't want to, get too much more out of him due to the language barrier. Also, some gnarly, illegal shit happened during that war, which I don't think I could bear to know about. Keep smiling, Pete. This is a friend of mine, but she's not that normal anyway, and this isn't so much of a confession, but something she tells literally anyone she meets. When she sees something cute, so has a huge desire to squish it. We are talking hamsters, chicks, little fluffy dogs, anything small. She'll say oh god, it's so cute. I just want to grab it, and keep squeezing and squeezing, until its little eyes go pop. She'll sometimes be more graphic than that as well. My friend said he was left alone with the body of his dead cousin during the funeral. Everyone got personal time to say goodbye or whatever, and he had X with it. He cried when he told us. I have no other information. An 18-year-old I had just met got crazy drunk, on the verge of alcohol poisoning, and said he was worried about a Hilde Korn case he was caught up in. I didn't want to know anymore, and made sure he didn't die, then got the duck out. I started seeing a girl about a month ago. She recently told me she was aped when she was 5. Her parents were druggies and had her at a young age, so she stayed with her grandma. But my girl's grandma was a drunk, so she would have her son, my girl's uncle, take care of her. He was about 25 when this happened. As the story goes, he went to go score whatever drugs he was on at the time and left his 5-year-old niece unattended in the car for who knows how long. When he returned, he found her covered in blood. She had reconstructive surgery on her back from where the guy tore her open. She confided all of this in me before I went down on her because she has confidence issues. Because one side looks stretched, doesn't bother me one bit. She says she still remembers his face and tries not to think about it. The most fucked up thing is, when the uncle brought her home, they did nothing. because he was buying drugs at his dealer's house when it happened. They did nothing to save the duckhead uncle that brought the 5-year-old around a bunch of junkies. Who knows what actually happened? He could have allowed it to happen for drugs. About 6 months after this happened, he killed himself. What? My girl says she doesn't like talking about it, so I don't ever bring it up. But I know it has definitely affected her mentally. I just wish there was something I could do to help her forget. TL. Doctor, my girl got molested when she was 5, while her uncle scored drugas and nothing was done about it. My ex-boyfriend could not handle our breakup. I broke it off with him because of significant issues, drugs, stealing, etc. I finally got out of it. He didn't. He would not give up on me. At first he was desperate at trying to get back with me, following me, waiting in obscure locations for when I walked to my car, and even threatening to kill himself if I didn't see him. I blocked his numbers, changed my email, transferred colleges, moved a state away, and tried to move on with my life. He was in and out of jail for drugs and stealing in addition to concealed weapons charges, which was scary for me knowing all the times when he confronted me alone. It was about 4 or so years later when I received the creepiest phone call. It was him calling to tell me that he was looking for me all this time. The tone of his voice, the horrific laughter, I freaked out. I called my parents and informed them, hey, if I go missing this is who has me. I called campus security and made sure they had his description. He never showed up, but my god, the voice on the other end of the line still brings chills. It scares me to this day that he is out there possibly looking for me. Luckily I've become more aware of precautions to take. Pepper spray, learning self-defense, etc. If I was in another state where obtaining a gun was easier, I would have done so. Unfortunately it's not so easy where I'm now. I do however have panic buttons and GPS locators, so if something were to happen, I can be found. I try not to let fear or paranoia run my life. I try to take the best precautions, but I will always have that fear that just around the corner, he will be waiting for me. Back in my early 20s, I'm 41 now, I had a small group of close friends. We'd get together after work and on weekends to smoke grass or drink. Sometimes someone would bring someone new. One new guy I'll call Scott started to hang out frequently on weekends. Seemed normal but mostly quiet. One night Scott gets stoned and tells the group how a neighbor abducted him and his younger brother at knife point from the woods behind their house and forced him to perform monkey acts with his younger brother while the neighbor watched. If they balked or refused, the guy would cut them or poke them with the knife. Scott's telling this story like he's no longer aware we are even in the room. He's looking through us. He tells us that the guy lets them go after like 8 hours. When Scott gets home, his little brother runs and hides, so he goes and tells his mom what happened, but she doesn't believe him and claims he's making it up to excuse the two boys for being late. The next day Scott's little brother still wouldn't come out of his room, so Scott tells his dad, then takes his dad and shows him his little brother's bleeding rectum. Scott tells us everything goes to hell from there. The cops are called. The story has to be told over and over again. Scott's parents' marriage explodes due to his mom not believing the story or even informing the father about it. Scott's mom tells everybody remotely close to the family the details, which embarrasses and humiliates both the boys. Scott says he tried to block it out, but his little brother is tormented by it despite tons of therapy. Parents divorce and Scott's dad has custody. Scott continues telling us how his brother blames him for everything for years. The little brother was sodomized by Scott multiple times during the ordeal. So a couple years go by and Scott's little brother is guilting him the whole time. The little brother decides the only way he can forgive Scott and get past it is if he gets to do to Scott what Scott was forced to do to him. Guilts Scott into it through a lot of blame and then threats of suicide. Afterwards the younger brother tells the parents and immediate family what he did to Scott. Then the brother decides he can't live with what he did with Scott. Brother writes in his suicide note that he can't understand how Scott could live with himself after what Scott did to him, because he can't live with what he did to Scott. The younger brother hanged himself. Scott tells this whole story to us, then he curls up in fetal position and starts bawling his eyes out. Everybody is just stunned. We did bong hits till Scott cried himself out, then the dude who first brought Scott in takes him home. We never see Scott again. If you like what I'm doing, consider subscribing to Reddit Thief for more Reddit TTS. Have a nice day.